Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Hope everybody's doing good. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Today we're going to be kicking off our one of our new 9mm reloading projects. So if you remember back in the spring, if you followed the channel for a while, I did a video on our mega 9mm reloading project, and essentially it was an overview of what we're planning on doing. And this is a thing of where we have quite a few 9mm cases to load. So we're going to break it down into 4 or 5 different projects, and this is going to be the first one. So with this project, what we're kind of aiming to do is we're aiming to kind of go a bit old school, essentially. 9mm has changed and evolved over the 100 and some years that it's been around. It's essentially, there's been different bullet weights thrown in there. There's been obviously quite a few powders that are suitable for 9mm. that have come out on the market over the years. And there's also a wider variety of firearms also that use 9mm, anywhere from pistol carbines to submachine guns to semi-automatic pistols, all that sort of thing. So it's a thing of where with 9mm now, with all the different bullets available and powders and different things, you can kind of tailor 9mm to what you need it for. And the manufacturers out there, they have done that themselves. What we've seen is that over time, originally with 9mm, it was typically a 124 grain bullet back in the World War I, World War II days. And it was loaded pretty hot, especially during wartime. If you're going to send something down the barrel, you want it to be moving, basically. And also to help reliably function a lot of these open bolt submachine guns that they were commonly using in World War II, for instance. So now what we've kind of seen is that a lot of the 9mm on the market, it's kind of changed over time. So you have, like, for instance, this is a factory round, just blazer brass. For the manufacturers out there, they know that for a lot of these people, what they're doing is they are just doing target shooting. They're shooting their Glock or whatever on the range. They might not necessarily need that extra oomph of power or whatever to cycle the pistol or to put the round down range. So in a lot of cases, what manufacturers have done also too, because people are price conscious as well, is, and like with the blazer brass here, they'll use a plated bullet. They'll use a lighter weight bullet, like a 115 grain bullet. They'll use just enough powder to where that gets the round to maybe about 1,000 or 1,050 feet per second. And, they're like, hey, that'll work for the average person. But the thing is, for some of us, especially those of us that kind of collect niche type firearms, in a lot of cases, a lot of these older European type firearms that are kind of facsimiles of like a submachine gun or something, closed bolt Uzi, for instance, or like a Suomi, like this one right here, which is a parts kit gun made by TNW Firearms. It's a thing of where, hey, they've got these big heavy bolts that essentially that round has got to kick back and cycle the action, and it takes a little bit of oomph to do that. So with this, what we're trying to do is kind of step out of that cheaper target-oriented ammo for just your average person shooting out on the range, and actually make something that's got some kick to it, that's going to reliably cycle, like the Suomi here, or the Uzi, or some of the other European type firearms. There's been people that have complained online, for instance, about the Strybog. But for a lot of those Euro firearms, they're designed to shoot kind of a hotter 9mm, not just some weak target 9mm round. So that's essentially what we're looking to do, is let's create something that will reliably function in these firearms, and give them kind of a shot at success in a sense. One of the things, like for instance with this Suomi, is that it's been maligned online on YouTube as just one of the worst firearms released in recent years and different things like that. And it pretty much comes down to people just using a weak 9mm in it. Myself, personally, once I started actually making my own ammunition and feeding this gun hotter ammunition haven't had really any reliability problems with it at all. And that's using drum magazines and other drum magazines that are, over 80 years old, and also two box magazines dating back to the 50s as well. So I found that using, ammunition that I tailored to my firearms for my Uzi and the Suomi and stuff, and even my CZ Scorpion, is that in terms of reliability, there's just, pretty much no issues at all whenever I do this and make this ammunition for these guns. So that's pretty much the whole goal of the project. And I've already, have loaded thousands and thousands of these in the past, so it's kind of a known quantity to me. So sometimes with some reloading projects I do, it's brand new to me, so you have to work a lot of stuff out. This I've already kind of worked out in the past, so I kind of know where I'm going with it. And I know that already the results I'm going to get. I'm basically just kind of sharing it with you. All right, folks, so now let's take a look at the some of the bullets we have to pick from. So going with what I have on my shelf, both of them are two excellent choices. They've worked very well in the past. And what we're kind of looking for is a 124 grain bullet, because typically what they have is they have kind of a sharper nose on them. Compared to typically like a 115 grain bullet or whatever. So, if you're shooting like a parts kits gun or something like that, where the trunnion or the feed ramp was originally designed to be used in a submachine gun, for instance, a lot of times I find that they like kind of this sharper angle on these 124 grain bullets, rather than kind of more of a rounded nose like you see in a 115 grain type bullet, for instance, or like maybe 147 grain bullet. So that seems to kind of work kind of well in those situations. And also too, that's kind of the traditional grain weight that they used back in the day in the 20th century in a lot of these firearms. And still to this day, NATO spec 9mm is a 124 grain full metal jacket bullet. So that's kind of where it still sits on the military side of things. So with these two good options, the one thing with this, with the Hornady, is that it is a full metal jacket bullet. So it kind of depends on pricing. Sometimes they'll be a bit more pricey than the Spear. Because of that, this has more of a traditional jacket on it. And the thing with the total metal jacket is that this is a plated bullet, but it's kind of a thicker plating. So they say, overall, I usually prefer to go with full metal jacket bullets. However, these TMJ bullets, they have worked pretty well, pretty much on par, for at least me, with full metal jacket bullets. In terms of the speeds we're shooting them at around 1,200 feet per second or so, I've not had any issues with leading or anything like that with them. No problems at all. I think the plating holds up to that just fine. No problems whatsoever. So both of them work pretty well, and they're both great options. These days too, keep a lookout for sales. Even in these times, a lot of these manufacturers will have like overruns. And right now, for instance, I've seen Hornady bullets on sale down to 9 cents a bullet. So they are out there, basically. There are sometimes deals available, so keep your eyes open. These Spear bullets I acquired for about 6 cents a piece back a few years ago. Spear was running a 20% rebate, and then also Midway was offering a 20% off sale with birthday pricing and free shipping. So essentially I probably got them for near the wholesale price, but whatever, that was a pretty good price on these. So I picked up a bunch of them at the time. So yeah, really good bullets either way. They both work real well. I've loaded them, and plenty over the years, and they're excellent choices. So there's probably other bullets out there as well, but essentially like picking your favorite 124 grain full metal jacket type bullet, would probably from, one of the major manufacturers, I'm sure would work just fine. Okay, so primers. I have a selection of different primers I can pick from. And I'm going to go with the cellular and below small pistol primers for this one. And the S&B primers, typically they have a little bit of a harder cup, I find, compared to the CCI, which will do just fine for the big heavy firing pin with the Uzi and the Suomi. Probably work a little bit better, although I've never had a problem really with the CCIs. And then the other thing you have to think about with these too is that the Europeans make their primers just slightly bigger. Not a lot, but just slightly bigger. So I'll talk about that in terms of the brass, how I basically prep the brass. The other thing too, some of you out there that are new to reloading will probably choke on this right now, but I bought these primers at Cabela's for $16 a thousand back about 6, 7, 8 years ago. At the time, Cabela's, when it was an independent company, and there was a little bit of a shortage of things in 2013, 2014, they brought over, a boatload of these primers, and they were selling them for $19.99 a piece for $1,000. I was also using 20% off gift cards or coupons at the time. And so at $16, I remember I was buying up a bunch of these and thinking, do I really need that many primers? And yes, I did. So wise purchase. So yes, I have plenty of these. So this is what we're going to end up using. And yeah, so they're pretty good primers. CCI, I would say, are my overall preferred primers for everything. But these work just fine for 1.6 cents a piece. We ain't gonna complain about it, that's for sure. All right, so what kind of powder are we gonna use? Well, we've got, out there on the market, there's, quite a few pistol powders out there, and of course manufacturers, they're coming up with new formulations and new powders, on I wouldn't say all the time, but on a fairly frequent basis, they're, coming out with new stuff here and there. So a lot of choice on the market, and experimenting as I did back over the years with 9mm and kind of finding what my favorite powders were. One of the powders I ran across that I just had fantastic luck with, especially with this load right here, is Power Pistol. And Power Pistol, like it says, designed for high performance semi-autos, maximum velocity, economical and efficient, made by Alliance. And also too, keep in mind that with the powder shortage and stuff that's happened in the past year, I have been able to find this on the shelf. So they have made it in recent times, so it's out there. You're just going to have to shop around or be Johnny on the spot to get it. But this is kind of my favorite powder when I want some oomph, And so there's other powders that are more suited for like target shooting and things like that. But whenever I want to kick in the pants and stuff, I go with Power Pistol for like 9mm. I've used it in 45 and all that. So it works very well, very consistent, pretty much no problems with it whatsoever. And it's just one of my favorite go-to powders. So it's something where actually I need to end up buying some more of it soon, and just so I have it on hand because it's such a wonderful powder. Are there other ones out there? Yeah, there's other ones that you can go with, that you can experiment with. But for me, that's what I have found that works for this load, and pretty much I have no plans to change, So with our brass, so with me, one of the things is that I've seen a variety of different opinions from different reloaders out there, but I'm fairly fastidious about cleaning my brass. And one of the things is I like to return it to pretty much close to new condition, and especially if it's nice and clean, I find it personally much easier to spot any defects with any brass and basically chuck that brass in the recycle bucket. Now with the brass that we're going to use, it's a mix. Some of it is some nickel brass that I picked up at a good price from, one of those companies that, they harvest up all the brass from, shooting ranges and stuff. And then basically I prepped it all myself. And then also there's a mix. There's actually some Lapua brass in there. There's also some Winchester NATO brass and all that. And some of that brass, like the Winchester NATO stuff, it has primer crimps. So those needed to go. And then also too, the one thing I wanted to do, because I know those cellular and below primers are a little bit of a tighter fit than the CCIs, is I wanted to make sure that, you know, everything, the primer pockets were uniformed and all that, and basically nice and clean. So essentially what I did was I swaged all the primer pockets, which was, you know, an additional step, but it was basically like, look, whenever I go to do this, I don't want to be running into issues with jamming up primers or whatever in primer pockets, especially with that stuff, that 9mm brass that might have a crimp on it. Let's just go ahead and uniform everything and make it, you know, just straight up simple and reduce the chances that I might have issues with it. So all this brass nicely cleaned, it's all been swaged and everything, and it's all good to go. All right, and one of our test firearms, just for fun, is going to be this TNW Suomi parts kit gun. So essentially what TNW did, from my understanding, was they took the parts kits and essentially did a new receiver tube, took the bolt and turned down the bolt, so that way no one could like take a full auto bolt and put it into the tube. So the tube is much narrower, and essentially also build it out as a rifle. So it has an extension essentially on the barrel to bring it past 16 inches. And so, yeah, it's kind of a tank. It's a very old school 1920s, 1930s firearm. Heavy steel and heavy wood, and fully loaded with a drum magazine. It weighs about 16 pounds. So it's a beast. It's not easy to film here with the camera because it is kind of a tank. But back in the day, the essentially submachine gun Suomi, to me, I would say it was pretty much the gun that saved Finland, because when the Russians invaded during the Winter War, this was really the firearm that had the firepower at close range in the pine forest to take on the huge swarms of all the Russians invading the country. And you know, as kind of cantankerous as it is, you know, it did the job very well. You know, definitely helped save the day and keep Russia from overrunning Finland. So quite an excellent firearm, and this will be one of the test firearms that we'll use for testing with this. So that should be a lot of fun too. All right, so to go ahead and wrap this video up, first thing I'll say is the next video that we do, probably what I'm going to do is do kind of a separate video where I'm just going to kind of separate it out and show how I set up my progressive press for 9mm, the dies that I use and why I use them and all that, and how I came up with the setup that I use. And then we'll actually get into doing this project and kicking it off and getting it going. So I'm looking forward to it. I haven't reloaded 9mm for probably since 2020 or so. So I'm pretty excited about it. And not only this, but stay tuned, because I'm working on so many other projects. I pretty much have like 10 projects. They're in various stages of filming or getting completed or getting posted. So stay tuned. And also too, I've got a shopping list of like different equipment to upgrade the whole video audio thing. So I think with what I have now, films okay, but definitely over the next year looking at different upgrades and stuff. So I'm having fun, so it should be a lot of fun for y'all, and feel free to leave any comments below, and we'll see y'all soon.